Welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom, on New Year's Eve.
Yes, New Year's Eve, although it's still good morning, but yes, 2010 has come to an end.
Well, it's coming to an end rapidly. For a few, it might come to an end pretty fast tonight when they all drink too much, get put in jail, and there's always car accidents. Terrible. I'm going to stay home myself.
Actually, speaking of car accidents, did you see that the road toll, indeed, in Victoria is almost level with last year, and they're hoping it won't go above, but I think tonight there's a fair chance that it will.
Well, you hope you're not going out?
No, I'm not going out.
No, nor am I. Now, I do want to wish all of our viewers a very happy and prosperous 2011. And we thought on this last show before the new year we'd talk about some of our predictions for the coming year. I'll open up, Tom, with I think the social unrest in Europe will continue because of the great reductions in pensions, raising school or university fees in the UK. Spain's got problems, Greece has got problems, Portugal's got problems, and I think people are going to remain very unhappy.
Well, I agree. In fact, funny enough, Germany has got the biggest problems, even though it is economically doing the best. Its government faces enormous pressure to pull out of the European Union, and I reckon this time next year we'll see a Europe that looks vastly different from the one we have today. So I'm not convinced the euro is going to survive.
So you think the French and the Germans might just fix their currency together and tip the others out?
Not worry about the others, because the reality is, what is the euro now doing for their people? And the answer is not much. And you know, German people who are hardworking, industrious, save money, are getting rather sick of having to bail out people they see as just wasting money in other countries. So it'll be interesting to see.
So do you think Germany would go back to the Deutschmark and France would go back to the franc, or would they keep one currency between the two?
I think the Germans and the French could just form a new currency. That would be the smartest thing to do. Call it the Rhinemark or something like that. But you know, and just leave the euro to all the other countries. And I think Britain will be proved to have done a smart thing years ago by keeping the pound.
So what would then happen to the euro? In that instance, the euro would drop dramatically.
Oh, it would tumble. I mean, it would do what used to happen to the drachma, to the Irish punts, to the lira. They'd be routinely devalued by their respective governments. In this case, the departure of the more productive countries, France and Germany, would mean that the euro would only be worth a fraction of what it now is.
So the EU would still stay in place because Germany and France would then become like Britain is today.
Yes, this is the thing. You never had to have a currency union to have the EU, and it's increasingly the case that the currency union probably didn't make sense unless you're going to have a full political union. Some people were pushing for a full political union, but I think that is now a long, long way away. And I think Europe could just go back to being having the same trade rules, free travel, that sort of thing. But I think the European experiment will be shown to have been a failure.
So therefore, there will still be easy passage. Everybody in the EU can go to wherever they like.
Of course. I mean, the Brits can already do that. Plenty of other people can. You don't have to have the same currency to achieve that end.
Righto, turning to Asia, my view here is that China and India will keep growing very strongly economically. Commodities, iron ore and coal, have been on the rise in the last 3 months, as has copper. There could be a flattening off there a little bit because they seem to have risen very steeply on the markets.
Well, I agree. I think the prices actually might even fall. You've got to remember that neither iron ore nor coal is actually that rare. They're quite common commodities. And as demand grows, as is happening quite rightly in China and India, of course supply ends up growing. And so, eventually you can't keep having supply and price growing at the same time. I think what will happen is that supply will rise to the point that prices of these commodities will probably level off.
Yeah, well, I don't think that'll happen within 12 months. And the reason I don't think it can happen, it takes you about 3 years to build a big iron ore mine. I think if you go out 5 years, you'd say prices are certainly going to be lower, but I'm not sure next year whether that'll be the case.
Remember, Rio and BHP and Vale in Brazil, they can ship more iron ore. I mean, they tend to try and restrict it a little bit to keep the prices high, and I think they will probably just increase their shipments. And of course, remember, markets are forward-looking. I mean, the fact that the supply and demand may not be balanced yet, the markets might perceive it to be balanced fairly soon in the future, and as a result, prices could adjust.
So, but now the recent flooding in Queensland is taking a couple of billion off our coal exports in the coming year. They say the cost of the floods, this is a guesstimate at this point, could be 5 or 6 billion to the government in taxes, and having to provide additional assistance. It was pathetic to hear the Prime Minister say a day or so ago they're going to give $1 million. $1 million going to go nowhere.
I thought it should have been $1 billion, not $1 million.
Exactly.
The reality is that flooding up in Queensland, of course, isn't unknown. These floods are particularly bad.
No, but these are the worst for 50 years.
That's true. There's a lot of flooded coal mines. The shares of Queensland Rail and, of course, most of the major insurance companies have come off the past few days. But look, in 6 months' time, it'll be a thing of the past.
Well, I think it's going to create one long-term problem for this government, long-term being a year for them, and that is that their budget position isn't going to be anywhere near as good. They will not be raising as many taxes.
Well,
and it makes further away the break-even situation that they've promised.
The government is committed to a balanced budget by 2013, 2014. Yeah. And I think, however, what's going to kill the government's budget is perhaps a bigger issue. They still haven't negotiated the mineral resources rent tax yet. And I think that is going to be a bit of a problem. The states are not going to play ball on the issue of state royalties, and I think that will be a major source of revenue for the federal government, which it won't be there or won't come in at the sort of levels they've budgeted for.
Now, on the state level in politics, I expect a decisive win in February to the Liberal coalition in New South Wales. There's 99 seats in the lower house of New South Wales. My pundits up there say Labor will be lucky to get between 20 and 25, so it'll be a rout. So we'll have an inexperienced but new Conservative government that will give us 3 Conservative governments: Western Australia, Victoria and New South Wales.
And of course, in another year's time, you'll have the election in 2012 in Queensland. And again, that may not be quite the same route, but it probably will be a route. So you'll end up with 4 state Conservative governments then.
Now, the most important thing I think Ted Baillieu will do in his first year is create some investment into the rail system, which desperately needs it in Victoria, and improve it for passengers. And I think he'll also throw out the Mikey, which has been a disaster in implementing and a disaster in cost.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Mikey has had $700 million spent on it, with another $700 million apparently committed. I think the state government will try and get out of that and actually spend the money on infrastructure instead, rather than a ticketing system. And we'll probably just keep the old system, which wasn't that bad anyway.
No, exactly. Now, you got any last tips?
Well, we were talking about commodity prices before, but having a think about the Australian dollar. Now, I'm going overseas in late March, early April to the US, and I've booked and paid for my trip now.
Dumb?
Well, no, I don't think it is dumb, and I'll tell you why. America's going to have a new Congress dominated by the right-wing conservatives in America, sometimes known as the Tea Party. I believe that they are going to stop this reckless policy of just printing more money as an answer to America's economic problems. It's not the right answer, and there's a substantial movement against it now in US politics, and I reckon one of the corollaries of that is they'll stop the downward slide of the US dollar. I believe the US economy is starting to improve. Jobless claims are coming good, as in they're not rising. I believe in the American economy coming back. As a result, I actually reckon the Australian dollar is going to fall this year, so I'd be making the most of it while it's strong.
Well, it's 101.73 this morning.
It is.
Okay, my last tip for next year is that Ponting will never captain an Australian cricket test team again. I heard Chappell, who's now on the selection committee, comment this morning on 927, one of the radio stations here in Melbourne, and very clear to me that a strong message is being sent. He'll come back and captain the team in the World Cup. That'll be it as far as captaincy goes. Will Clark succeed? I don't know. If he makes some runs, he could be captain for a long time. I prefer Haddon, the wicketkeeper, to be in the job myself, more mature and a decent sort of bloke.
Well, speaking of that, I think if Ponting had any real guts, he should just resign. He shouldn't hang on and wait for the selectors to do it for him or he should resign.
No, I don't think he should. I think he should go to the World Cup, which is the. He should.
He's led Australia to a debacle in Test. We've got to stop distinguishing between one sort of cricket and another. He's failed. He should go.
Well, it's obvious you know little about cricket, Tom. Now, any stocks for next year?
Well, I think if the government does the deal with Telstra over the National Broadband Network, the NBN, I actually expect to see some life put into Telstra shares. The big bank stocks have gone nowhere this year. I actually don't think they'll go any further next year. In fact, I reckon the whole stock market could have another flat year. So I'm not so certain shares are going to be the place to be. And finally, interest rates. I think you think they're going to stay level. I still reckon we might get another 25 to 50 basis points of increases. From what I understand, the banks have still got higher funding costs overseas, irrespective of what what the Reserve Bank does. I think the big four
So
banks...
I don't think the Reserve Bank's going to put in.
No, but I think the big four banks will lift their mortgage rates for customers here.
I mean, a month ago everybody was saying we're going to get interest rate hikes again next year. I do not see that happening. There's no doubt retail sales have been very disappointing, and there's no doubt the housing market has flattened out. And I agree with you, the banks might put their rates up a little bit, but I think the Reserve Bank will sit on their hands.
So it sounds like a year, financially speaking, of not much happening.
Well, I've got one good stock for you to buy, Easy Bonds, which is on the third board in London. They're currently trading at 5p. I expect by the end of this year they'll be over 20p. Happy punting on the stock market. That is a punt, but I think it's a good one. And have a great, prosperous and happy new year, and we'll see you all next year. Thank you.